true entrepreneurs are not born, they're made. The same way we say in Setswana that Moremogolo go betla wa taola wa motho wa ipetla. You make yourself, you actually mold yourself. It has to be a conscious, deliberate effort. First, recognize that you don't know enough and that you can always learn. So if you have a mindset where you are looking at what service can I provide and how can I optimize on the service to give it to a bigger number of people, the question of what is now in your bank account becomes incidental. You should recognize that whatever you've achieved, there are people who have achieved 100x whatever you have, and there are people who are 100x below. You should not get carried away, but you should still have that desire to grow. I mean, you cannot be the same person on the 1st of January as the person you are on the 31st of December.
Help me welcome to the show today, Mr. Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. How are you doing, sir? Have you ever wondered, how do I get funding for my business? How do I create a successful pitch for investors? How do I go on to create long-lasting success for my business? Ladies and gentlemen, in this episode, be prepared to be blown away by Mr. Mompoloki Mogobe, a serial entrepreneur, a property investor, a legal dynamic force, a restaurateur, a podcaster, a man that wears many, many hats. Prepare to be captivated by his wisdom and achievements. Hey everybody, welcome to Deep Dive. Thank you for stopping by. If it's your first time, welcome to the channel. If it's your second time, thank you for coming through. Definitely subscribe to this channel. Our content is on business, personal development, and personal finance. And comment below on your biggest takeaway from this episode and share this video with one friend. It helps us reach newer audiences. And it helps us know if you're actually enjoying our videos and what content you would like to see more of. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's deep dive. In your journey, when did the entrepreneurial bug hit you? Did it just come to you, or it's something you intentionally decided, okay, this is where I want to now go?
I think it was incremental, but there was a time when it really intensified in terms of the urge to do it. If I consider the fact that my mother was an entrepreneur, we had a Samausu. Sometimes I pass by there, by Kokatsani, an old lady. And she used to take us there, and, she was doing entrepreneurial stuff, selling small things and providing things like fuel to the community. And Old Naledi would come from Extension 2 to Old Naledi. And I didn't know that was entrepreneurship, but I was learning from her. At the same time, she had a sewing business in Ginger. So she used to take us there as kids, and after school, we used to mingle with her. So that was the first dose of entrepreneurship.
Yes.
At the same time, my dad, my grandfather and my dad, I call myself a product of two cattle posts. Mahumalebe being one, and the one before that being Makatanyane. So there was entrepreneurial activity in the sense that my dad would take some of these cattle to BMC. That was entrepreneurship. There was a value exchange taking place. So, but, to be honest with you, insofar as far as I was concerned, I was quite content with being a lawyer for the rest of my life, until I had what I call a cataclysmic event around 99, 2000, when there was a threat of me losing my license as a lawyer, where an application was actually launched at the High Court to remove my name from the role of attorneys. So I call it cataclysmic because it really looked like the end of the world.
Yeah, it changed everything.
Yeah, because at the end of the time, at the time, my wife was working for me as an accountant, and we said, we sat down, we said, baby, maybe we should change the game. She went back to school to finish.
She's actually here.
Yeah, she's actually here to finish whatever education she was working on. I think she was working on a second degree, and at the same time, I also repositioned myself, where I went aggressively into entrepreneurship, but then I've refocused on property development and property acquisition. So when I did that, then we were then able to see that, look, there's more to life than just being a lawyer, or club, as it were. And then we had a broader outlook to life. And then from that, then on, I think the key time would be around 2000, 2001, because I even got into Amway around the same time. And if anybody who's been to Amway, if you put aside the products for a minute,
Yes.
and just focus on the personal development, where they give you all these books, they give you all these tapes. And one of the books that I was exposed to around then was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, and of course, for me, the classic Cash Flow Quadrant.
Yeah.
And that sort of shifted. It was a massive mind shift. Talk of a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And then, as they say, the rest is history.
That's history. Because I wanted to know exactly that, because many of the times we talk about entrepreneurship as people say, man, that's a born entrepreneur. That's a born entrepreneur. Others say entrepreneurship is something you can learn. What are your thoughts on that?
There's a joke that John Maxwell likes cracking. There's entrepreneurs made or born. And he says, I haven't yet met one who wasn't born. So, but on a serious note, my belief is that the true entrepreneurs are not born; they're made. Even if you're a second or third generation entrepreneur, in other words, if you've sucked entrepreneurship from the bosom of your parents, you still need to have been exposed to it. Then you are made into an entrepreneur. For the most part, we say Asian families are second or third generation. And the reason for that is that those kids have been made to sit in the till. They've been made to follow their parents around to learn about entrepreneurship. So similarly, I'm a strong believer that it's a mindset. The same way we say in Botswana that more mogolo go betla wa taola wa motho wa ipetla. An entrepreneur, wa ipetla. You make yourself, you actually mold yourself. It has to be a conscious, deliberate effort.
Lovely stuff. Talk to me about the people you work with.
Yeah.
What are the people what is somebody that comes to the door and says, because I'm sure you get a lot of offers, Mr. Mogobe, I want to work for you. I can work for free.
Yeah.
No, these things. You know what we say as entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
Yeah, when we come with these offers and as managers and everything, what is the kind of person and what do you look at in your criteria of working with people?
It's more of an art than a science, in the sense that there's a lot of trial and error, especially error. I'm fortunate in that I have a very entrepreneurial wife. She's up here, and she's running one of our divisions, the sanitation division,
Yes.
which is about waste management. And she's been doing it now for a couple of decades. Before that, as I mentioned, she was working with me. Now she's opened a whole new division. It has its challenges. But yes, you unfortunately have to trust people if you're going to grow. But if you trust people, my experience is that sooner or later, there's that knife that gets stuck in the middle of your shoulder blades. And if I talk the last 3-4 months, I've had one manager mess up here, and I have another manager steal from me. But you recognize that there's no growth without a measure of trust. So you need to take a risk and then watch those people, see them blossom, act quickly when they go out of shape, and try to sort things out. I mean, in the case of one manager, we had a disciplinary hearing, and they were warned, and they had done a major mistake, but we decided to keep them. In the case of another manager, because it was issues of integrity and fraud and so on, we had to get rid of them. So to answer your question, it's really the preparedness to take risk. It's all about trial and error. Because sometimes I hire people with the perfect CVs, the perfect resume, and flawless. You ask even past employers, everything adds up.
Ability to work under pressure.
Yeah. And then 6 months down the line, a year down the line, you are crying, you're pulling your hair out, or what little remains of it. and then you realize that it's not about the resume, it's not about the interview. It's really about whether you can bring this person in and then show them the ropes, and then they have enough integrity, they have enough, gumption in terms of that ability to get things done from where they come from, and then hope that so a lot of it is that, give them the ropes, pray hard, hope that they do it, but watch them.
You gotta watch them.
And sometimes it backfires.
Yeah.
But you have to keep going.
Hey, yeah, I think it's a conversation that a lot of us, a lot of entrepreneurs or business people can relate to. Just even the difficulty of letting go, especially at the beginning. You know, when you have started this whole thing, you're like, you're working very hard. You know the sleepless nights you put it in, and now you have to let go and give it to someone. It's very difficult. But I think you put it very well.
But you won't grow unless you do it.
But you won't grow. You just keep working and working and working. And then at the end of the day, it's going to be, I wanted to talk about now part of the real estate, especially as it relates to the financing of real estate. Talk to us about, that, how you acquire real estate and finance it using debt, meaning other people's money, because it's, it's capitalism. And that is how, that is how countries have grown. That is how economies have grown, not with your own money, but because you talk about it in the beginning, you use your own money, but now you do it. Like, walk us through that.
Well, I'm fourth generation Seventh-day Adventist, which means that I was, I grew up going to church, sometimes kicking and screaming against my inclinations, against my wishes. But, the thing that you get from the pulpit sometimes is that, debtors are slaves to the lenders, and then you do get all kinds of things.
Money is the root.
Money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
That it's easier for a camel
to
go through the needle than you hear all these things, and then over time you develop the notion in your head that debt is fundamentally bad. That debt is really bad. But so for me, when I started, it was all about cash. It was all about cash. It's something around mid-2000s that I first got my, 2006, as I recall, that I first got my loan because of that mindset. Then I had to encounter that mind shift and appreciate fully that there's bad debt, which takes money out of your pocket, and good debt, which brings money out of your pocket. So I had to study the Kiyosakis of this world, the Phil Towns of this world, and many other authors. And then I had the advantage of having mentors, and I talk about it in my book, which is forthcoming book, having people like Re Ntsemele Mahang as your mentor, having people like Re Said Abu Fazl Jamali as your mentor, having people like Reman Hamuni as your mentor.
Hey.
Yeah, these people were my mentors, but also my clients. So there was that advantage, especially the last two, not so much Ramahang. There was the advantage of having that attorney-client relationship, which then became a mentor-mentee relationship. And they were able to open up on certain things. And I understood that, look, you have to accept the importance of using OPM, but be careful. I was ultra-conservative because there's a thing called debt-to-equity ratio. When I started, it was like 1%, 2%, 3%. And now I'm comfortably getting to a point of 10% in terms of the debt-to-equity ratio. And you look at listed property companies like Time Projects, and you see the debt-to-equity situation in the region of 40%. And some retail companies up to 60%. So you have to ask yourself, if such large companies are comfortable with such a massive debt-to-equity ratio, can you not take a few baby steps? If you know in terms of your balance sheet, in terms of your assets, that you can absorb a shock in the event that things go south, why don't you take a little bit of calculated risk and borrow more and borrow more? Having, of course, done your numbers. There are, of course, metrics like the 1% rule, there's yield, there's other mechanisms which I teach about in my mentorship class, which I've applied and used to ensure that although you take the risk, there's a margin of safety which enables you to be more likely than not to survive in the event of a shock, such as, COVID, or, maybe suddenly the bank turns its tables on you. There's a new bank manager who hates your guts. It has happened to me, and decides to pull on one of your loans. What do? You've got to be able to absorb something like that happens. Yeah.
Okay.
Absorb the shock.
Lovely. Of course, everything, like you said in your book, in the aspect you sent me, nothing is as certain as death. Everything is
And
everything you have
Texas.
to have caution, and Texas.
Yeah, only
everything you
Texas
have to
and
have
death are
caution.
certain.
Yeah. But Warren Buffett talks about it also, and you mention him a lot. He says the number one rule is don't lose money, and start and know what you're doing, know the game. So talk to me about now knowing the game and really getting good at the game, because I think this is something that we have to be very intentional about. Talk to me about that and how you had to really go into it, like the ins and outs of knowing the game.
Yeah, I'd flip it a little bit and say, first recognize that you don't know enough and that you can always learn, and be teachable. Don't be set in your ways. Of course, you have your values, you have guidelines, but don't be too rigid. If you consider the fact that during COVID, banks, the first year of COVID, banks were not lending at all. But if I was rigid in the way that I was approaching this thing pre-COVID, I would not have grown during COVID. I would not have borrowed money. I would not have. But I was prepared to take a different position and put a more substantial deposit, and then, use some of our own assets to keep growing, even during those tough times. So I think the main thing is to be teachable. The main thing is to have mentorship. The main thing is to also be prepared. Be prepared to absorb the shocks in the system as they go on. Know that if you are not in a crisis, you're getting out of a crisis or walking into a crisis. Know that that's the nature of the life. And know that God and the universe is so fair. It has distributed crises among everybody. Those who are doing well and those who are not doing well. So once you recognize that it's about surviving crises or challenges, then you can deal with them better. You expect them all the time and you deal with them better. But I don't think it's about knowing and mastering the game. It's about a preparedness to adapt to various shocks. Use what you have, but be prepared to adapt when things change. Instead of being despondent, instead of being discouraged, instead of saying, Zwaga pressa, enough is enough. Because you need to, as part of your values, you need to incorporate the value of perseverance, the value of resilience, which these two are otherwise known as grit, Grit. So once you incorporate that as part of your game plan, you find that you are better able to get a lot further than you yourself think is possible.
Thank you. Remo Mogobe, talk to us now about A&B and the work you do there. You are the director of A&B. Talk to us about the work you do there and what A&B is all about.
Yeah, like the name implies, Angel Network Botswana. An angel is someone who is willing to risk their funding for the benefit of growth. We jokingly say that there are three categories of people where people normally get money, which are friends, family, and fools. And the angels are sort of quote unquote fools, but they're not entirely foolish in the sense that they have systems by which they optimize to ensure that they get their money back. Typically, an angel would take a minority stake in a startup, in a new business, and then they would walk the entrepreneur through the initial stages to maybe second round of funding, because there are lots of rounds of funding. Normally there's round 1, round 2, now round 3, but normally typically the angels would be 1 or 2 stage before maybe somebody gets to venture capitalists. Venture capitalists, we jokingly call them sharks. I know of venture capitalists who will not even look at your business for anything less than $500,000 in terms of the ticket. So it's like they're the second level in the food chain of startups. So in terms of Angel Network Botswana, we realized that there was a real need in the ecosystem, because we believe that things should start from the bottom up as opposed from the top down. We commend our government for such efforts as Botswana Investment Hub or digital investment, but it's more of a top down. It's a coming there. It's a physical structure. You want something that is in the grassroots, that develops and bubbles from the ground. So, but we are pleased in the sense that somewhere, the investment, the BDI should be here. Botswana Digital Investment Hub, it's been renamed, would be from the top down, and we would be from the bottom up. And in that sense, we meet in the middle in terms of creating a dynamic ecosystem for investments.
Yes. So what does it take to become an angel? You talked about having about 50 angels.
Yeah, I think you apply if you are interested. You need to be a business owner or have a substantial interest in a business. And then you have to be willing to pay the annual subscriptions. And then, of course, when you apply like that, you need to be recommended by one of us. So really, you have to have an interest in young startups. You have to be willing to participate in an effort to grow the ecosystem. That is all that we require.
It's an invite only.
Well,
somewhat.
It's arguable somewhat, but I don't remember us rejecting anyone.
Okay.
So yes, you need to be recommended.
What are some of the key or top top values or skills that people need to come with as they pitch? What does a successful pitch look like? Give us some of those qualities.
Well, you have to be confident. This is why I want to say to all entrepreneurs out there who call themselves introverts, who call themselves shy, that lose that shyness or try to control it. You have to be able to communicate what you're about. So that's the first thing we look at, because that confidence tells us that you know your stuff. And of course, you have to demonstrate that you understand the numbers. For instance, at the beginning of your pitch, you have to be able to say what percentage of your business are you offering and in exchange for what amount of money. You have to be clear at the beginning. And then when you are asked about your valuation, it has to be clear that you understand how to arrive at. You should have at least spent some time with an accountant or somebody with accounting skills to value your company appropriately. Because if you exaggerate the value, you're going to discourage investment. At the same time, if you make it too cheap, you might be undervaluing yourself. So it's important that you understand the numbers. The other thing that we look for is we call it traction, and otherwise known as proof of concept. Traction in terms of numbers. Are they sales that you have secured to indicate that people are interested in your service or your product? Number two, do you have potential customers? For instance, do you have outstanding orders that you have to fulfill, for instance? That's an indication that you've been out there in the market and you've been interacting with the market. The other thing we're interested in is to see whether you yourself have invested in yourself. It has to be clear that you have put some skin in the game, as I mentioned earlier. There are a total of 10 of them that are key that I mentioned in the nuggets, but to me, those 5 are the key ones.
Okay. Talk to me about The Gentle Giant, because I read it and I was, I read it and I reread certain parts of it. It was amazing, and it was a lot actually to process even as I was reading it. So walk us through that. I think it's something that would even draw a lot of excitement for the book itself.
Well, I mentioned how it all started in terms of really coming up with that terminology, that I had gone to the movies with the kids. I have 4 children, and we had gone to see the Transformers, which is a popular movie. And there's a character there called Optimus Prime. And as we were busy setting up these businesses and going about our business, it dawned on me while watching that movie that, what we're creating is similar to this transformer structure.
Entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah. and I was thinking to myself, how do I piece it together? And then I noticed that, this thing has only 2 legs, but we have so many legs. So I created the Gentle Giant with the help of Sekele and Otlaha, my 2 sons, in the sense that it captured what we are about. We have at the head myself and the board of governors and some family members. And then in the chest, we have those three concentric circles, but the top ones is development, which is what we're basically doing. We're identifying pieces of land to develop. We're thinking in terms of putting up warehouses, multi-story buildings, and so on. This is what we've been able to achieve, and I think we're just getting started. We're now thinking in terms of forming townships and actually creating much bigger developments. So that's development. And then we have still as at the top of the gentle giant, acquisition. That division deals with the acquisition of property. We identify sometimes distressed properties, sometimes properties owned by highly motivated sellers, and we're looking at getting them at a discount. And we're also looking to coming up with a deposit to create that margin of safety. So that is a whole enterprise in itself. And this is how we have acquired a substantial portion of our assets. And then at the bottom, we have the belly of the beast. I talked about three concentric circles. That belly of the beast, and I define it in the book as being the engine where it all happens in terms of management and consolidation, where we have the majority of our employees active there. The idea is that we have to be able to manage all these properties. We have to be constantly looking at how the whole system cuts together. When a building is complete, how it is onboarded, as it were, and how tenants are sought. That is the belly of the beast. And then we have the arms. One arm is the right hand, which represents employees, and the left arm, which represents independent contractors. All of these work in tandem, but the legs are the supporting legs. Some of them, Kimakata Dimechi, we have the one responsible for securities and stocks called Itara. We have the original, which is the law firm, which is still used for debt collection, for transfers, and all sorts of things. We have the restaurants there, and then at the bottom we also have the sanitation division, which is clean cities and towns. It also has to blend in with the rest, and then we have a whole chunk on speaking, where I'm able to speak, I'm able to communicate, I'm able to charge for my speaking, and then I'm also able to control the nuggets of wisdom, things having to do with communication and speaking, but as part of the bigger brand as well. But it's also supporting in the sense that it's income generating as well. And then we have a whole chunk on philanthropy, which is about church building. We're very active in building churches and trying to give back through that effort, and speaking at churches and trying to bring up young entrepreneurs, at the same time giving back. And then we have other legs, like for instance, we have new ones that we're working on. Like we're working on a brokerage division, which is also like an agency which we are setting up, which we are growing. So when I last checked, we had about 10 legs, which are still developing.
Yeah.
That's a gentle giant, but I think you'll enjoy it better when you read it in the book.
Yeah, they should look out for that. Lovely. Also, in the Gentle Giant, you talked about a philosophy where you said, in business, you're here for economic aspirations and also spiritual aspirations. I think on the economic side, we might understand, but can you walk us through the spiritual aspirations that...
Well, I always remind my audiences that, especially Seventh-day Adventists, that the most important verse that says the seventh day, talks about the seventh-day rest, talks about 6 days you shall work. So the majority of the time, you're expected to apply yourself to creative creation, and it ties in with the original verse, which talks that we're here to dominate and to have dominion over the fish, over the plants and whatnot. So looking at these things, they come together to say, look, it is a spiritual imperative. If you consider that money and resources are spoken of in the Bible more than any other item. I think when I last checked, it was something like 2,200 verses where money and resources, more than salvation, more than love, more than the kingdom of heaven. We're taught about resources, and the Jewish community has recognized this, because if you looked at the Torah and if you look at the Talmud and if you look at all the teachings, how they start a 7-year toddler up to the time you reach year 13, when you are now going to the bar mitzvah to become an adult. Throughout this time, they're teaching you about resources, safeguarding our resources, and wealth. Not not only wealth creation, but wealth preservation. So these are, to me, the Jews have got it right, because if you look at the level to which they are successful, you realize that they've embraced this. Other cultures need to embrace it more. And to some extent, our Arab brothers and our Indian brothers have embraced it more than we have as Africans. So it is a spiritual in that sense, in that the good book teaches about it and delves on it. For instance, if you look at the book of Proverbs and the book of Ecclesiastes, those are more books on entrepreneurship than anything else. If you look at them, to me, I list them among the top books on entrepreneurship that I've read.
You're a father also. How are you able to, because I can only think that business people maybe in your position would want to be able to, pass the baton on, and, teach the younger generation coming. How are you able to teach those valuable lessons to your kids and bring them in the businesses as they are right now?
That's a very interesting question. I would argue, and I think I can write a book on this, that 100 years ago, before industrialization and colonialization, that's how we thought about things. Maybe even before the advent of slavery, it was very clear. You teach your kids, you bring them up, you're always taking them to the cattle post, to the Massimo, and always getting them involved from a young age and making them part of what you're doing. I don't know what happened during the industrial age that we divorced what the parents did from what the children did. And, and we stopped talking about money around the dinner table. Whereas the Jewish community and some other successful communities financially talk about it openly and repeatedly and endlessly. They've involved their children in all of this. I tried to do that, and I succeeded more with the last two, in my judgment, than with the first two, because I think the first two are still in the dark myself. But I used to have a reward system where if I want to give them the allowance, I tie it up to a particular piece of work or to a particular achievement. And I even ask them to read. Say, you read this book, you cover these chapters, this is what you get. And they hated me for it initially, but now they love me for it. So it was worth it. So every parent has to figure out a way, especially if they believe that they want to nurture entrepreneurs. They have to figure out a way early of bringing them in to what they are doing and sharing with them what they are doing and giving them tasks, giving them assignments. We go to a point where, the last two were working as waiters and waitresses in the restaurant. And I used to drag them, whether they liked it or not, to building sites and get them involved, ask them to get their hands dirty wherever they could. But, that's all you can do as a parent, try and expose them. If they decide on their own to pursue other areas, you'll have done your part in terms of exposing them. Because I think I don't know whether it's in the Talmud or it's in the Torah, that it's actually a duty from above for a parent to train a child in economic pursuits. I think it's in the Talmud. It's a Jewish text where it's an obligation that a parent has. So if we take it like that, or maybe if we adopt some of that thinking, perhaps we can go a long way.
Lovely. Yeah. Lovely. I know you do this a lot in Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to try to do it on Deep Dive. Face the camera and give us a message to entrepreneurs and SMEs.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you are watching me now means you've survived. I think mathematicians say 1 in a billion chance in terms of your survival, just from the point of being born. If you look at the amount of I have to choose my language carefully. The chances of you being there, I'm sure you've heard this before. So you are special, you are unique. Do not allow a single soul to ever get you to compromise on your uniqueness and your specialness. And develop an element of deafness. Be deaf to those who are undervaluing you, to those who are focusing on your shortcomings. Concentrate on your strengths, and there is not one single thing you cannot achieve. If you are purposeful, you are determined, and you're consistent.
Beautiful. Thank you guys for watching this episode. We really hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. Deep Dive is dedicated to bringing you the most comprehensive and engaging information about business, personal finance, and personal development. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with all our latest content. If you liked this video, give it a like to show your support and help us reach a wider audience. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and your family who may be interested. Sharing helps us grow our community and connect with like-minded individuals. Leave a comment below and give us your biggest takeaway on this episode. If you're interested in being a part of our live studio audiences, make sure to register for the next show. Can't make it to the show? No problem. Check out our Patreon page to watch the full episode and get exclusive access to more great content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode of The Deep Dive.